At the Guardian Knight's words, the man named Divine Shadow standing atop the flying serpent frowned. It was clear that he hadn't expected Warblood to use such a powerful move against them. We have no choice but to fight. I'll activate my berserk skill and distract them afterward. In the meantime, you guys figure out a way to escape this place, Divine Shadow said as he looked at Warblood's approaching experts. He then turned to the female knight Cleansing Flame and added, "Remember, do everything you can to leave, even if it means escaping by yourself. Only if you escape will Heaven's Blade have hope." "Yes, sir," Cleansing Flame answered, a solemn expression appearing on her face. Now that Heaven's Blade had already disbanded and Warblood was even hunting down Heaven's Blade's members on Dragonheart Island, Heaven's Blade's only hope of making a comeback was to seek help from the outside world. With the deeds of the Special Zone's lands in her hands, it was entirely possible to recruit the help of a super guild if they paid a certain price. However, before Cleansing Flame could control her flying serpent to head for the barrier's edge, a powerful voice echoed in the ears of Heaven's Blade's members. "Escape? Do you think it's that easy? None of you should think of leaving today." Before Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame could react to the situation, a man suddenly appeared in front of them. This crimson-eyed man wore a dark red robe and held a crimson wooden staff. His entire being also gave off an indescribably evil feeling. Just by hovering in the air, this evil-looking man exerted a powerful pressure on Heaven's Blade's members. Divine Shadow and the others felt as if a mountain were weighing down their bodies. They could also feel the mana surrounding them growing hostile. Autumn Plant. A hint of confusion appeared in Divine Shadow's eyes when he saw the crimson-robed man. "Impossible. Shouldn't you be leading a team to the 4th floor?" The evil man blocking their team was none other than Autumn Plant, one of Warblood's 4 great vice-commanders, as well as Warblood's sole Tier 4 member. As a great wizard, he was in existence capable of destroying half of a small island with one attack. Previously, Autumn Plant had even single-handedly wiped out tens of thousands of 13 Thrones' experts using a single Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell. Over 20 of the casualties were Void Realm experts, and 3 were Domain Realm experts. As a result of this severe loss, 13 Thrones had no choice but to back off from competing with Warblood. After this battle, Autumn Plant had also been crowned the undisputed #1 player on Dragonheart Island. Meanwhile, it was because they had caught wind that Autumn Plant had left for the World Tower's 4th underground floor that they had attempted to escape Dragonheart Island. Yet now, ha ha ha, if I didn't visit the 4th floor, would you remnants be willing to come out? Autumn Plant sneered contemptuously as he looked down on Divine Autumn and the others. "You tricked us." Divine Shadow clenched his fists in anger. He never thought that he would fall for Autumn Plant's trap. "We've always been rivals in the past. Now that you've gotten promoted to Tier 4, I want to see just how strong you've become." After saying so, Divine Shadow activated his berserk skill, his aura skyrocketing to the point of rivaling Tier 4 mythic monsters. At this time, if comparing purely in terms of aura, Divine Shadow was not the slightest bit inferior to Autumn Plant. Fool! When Autumn Plant sensed the intensity of Divine Shadow's aura skyrocketing, his scion remained unchanged. Instead, he merely waved his hand. Before Divine Shadow could react, over a dozen crimson chains appeared out of thin air and bound his body. And despite struggling with all his might, he couldn't break free from their restraint, no matter what. On the contrary, his resistance weakened as time passed. How was this possible? Cleansing Flame was stunned. Divine Shadow was one of Heaven's Blade's few Domain Realm experts. With his berserk skill activated, logically, he should be able to put up a good fight against a Tier 4 player. Yet, Divine Shadow was captured instantly. Autumn Plant had thoroughly shattered their understanding of Tier 4 existences. Humph. You people don't know just how massive the gap between Tier 3 and Tier 4 classes is. Do you really think you can turn things around when going up against me? Looking at Cleansing Flame's stunned expression, Autumn Plant sneered. Let alone one Domain Realm expert, even 10 Domain Realm experts working together won't last more than 3 moves against me. Realizing the difference between them, Divine Shadow turned to Cleansing Flame and the others and shouted, "Damn it! Damn it! Everyone, kill yourselves! Don't let him capture you! Don't even think you can kill yourselves so easily!" Autumn Plant said, brandishing his staff. The next moment, blood-red chains appeared from the void and bound Cleansing Flame and the others, preventing them from moving their bodies at all. The difference between the two sides was clear for all to see. How can a Tier 4 class be so powerful? Divine Shadow and the others stared at Autumn Plant with disbelief. They had seen Xueqi's battle video during the reserve seat competition at the War God's Temple. In their opinion, although Tier 4 players were powerful, they were not an insurmountable opponent. However, they actually couldn't offer even the slightest resistance to Autumn Plant. The strength Autumn Plant displayed far surpassed Xueqi's. While Heaven's Blades members were shocked by the massive gap in strength between them and Autumn Plant, Warblood's other members caught up with them and secured them. Alright, take them to the NPCs. Chapter 2796. Black Flame's astonishing appearance. When Divine Shadow and the other Heaven's Blades members saw Autumn Plant teleporting away, their eyes turned bloodshot, and they desperately tried to stop him. Unfortunately, none of them managed to break free of their restraints, and they could only watch helplessly as the scene before them continued playing out. Damn it! At this moment, Divine Shadow couldn't help wondering why Autumn Plant had managed to get promoted to Tier 4. In terms of combat standards, Autumn Plant couldn't even rank within Dragonheart Island's top 20. The only advantage he had was his race as a half-elf, which granted him a slightly better affinity with mana. However, the promotion quest of half-elves was also much harder than that of humans. For the sake of balance, races with strong talents in God's domain would often find their talents becoming shackles that prevented them from advancing. Hence, not many players were willing to convert to other races. Only those with incredible willpower would take this risky path. As proof of the limitation of other races, Autumn Plant had gotten promoted to Tier 3 slightly later than players of similar levels and combat standards. Yet, he was actually the first to reach Tier 4 on Dragonheart Island. This situation was simply unbelievable, no matter how Divine Shadow looked at it. In reality though, Autumn Plant's promotion to Tier 4 was a complete accident. It wasn't something he had actively sought to accomplish. Instead, his promotion was related to the legacy of his hidden class. Vice Commander. We don't have many Horned Eagles. Aside from the two of the other Vice Commanders remaining on Dragonheart Island, the only other Horned Eagle I can think of belongs to the missing team leader, Yuluo, Cleansing Flame said worriedly as she looked at the approaching Horned Eagle. Could that person flying toward us be team leader Yuluo? It should be, but it's useless to say anything now, Divine Shadow said, smiling helplessly. If we can't do anything against Autumn Plant, what more can Yuluo do? At this time, he no longer held any hopes of Yuluo escaping. It might have been a different story if Yuluo were a scout class, but as a cleric, she wouldn't notice Autumn Plant's rapid approach before it was too late. That's right. Now that Autumn has taken action, they can't escape. You should just obediently follow us back and persuade your commander. At this time, a blue-clad woman suddenly appeared beside Divine Shadow and the others, giving Cleansing Flame and the others a scare. This female ranger was none other than Ink Feather, another one of Warblood's 4 great vice commanders. I never thought that Warblood would send 2 of its vice commanders just to stop us. What an honor, Divine Shadow said provocatively as he looked at Ink Feather. Shadow, there's no point in inciting me. In fact, he even had trouble speaking right now. Black Flame. Autumn Plant's reaction was because this man was the culprit responsible for Warblood's loss of reputation on Dragonheart Island. This man had also very nearly turned Warblood into a joke to the various superpowers. Hence, this man was the person Blood Oath, Warblood's commander, wished to kill the most. That's right. Nodding, Xueqi removed his hood and smiled at Autumn Plant. We meet again, Vice Commander Autumn. The instant Xueqi removed his hood, a wave of restlessness spread through the Warblood members spectating the situation from a distance. Heaven's Blades members were similarly astonished to see Xueqi. Black Flame was currently a big shot that everybody in God's domain knew of. He had thoroughly risen to fame during the reserve seat competition as the first player in God's domain to reach Tier 4. Although there hadn't been any news of him recently, his performance during the competition was still being discussed by countless players even today. This is great. It's really Guild Leader Black Flame. Cleansing Flame grew ecstatic when she saw Xueqi. Although Heaven's Blade wasn't considered allies with Zero Wing, the organizations had a relatively good relationship. In fact, Zero Wing was one of the guilds they intended to seek help from when they were planning to escape from Dragonheart Island. The arrival of Zero Wing's guild leader was undoubtedly a wonderful situation for Heaven's Blade. Moreover, Xueqi was a Tier 4 player. Even Autumn Plant shouldn't dare act recklessly before him. However, as Cleansing Flame and the others were rejoicing, Ink Feather sneered at them. Don't celebrate too soon. Black Flame's appearance here is just perfect. Looking at Feng's distant figure, Inkfeather smiled faintly. He turned Warblood into everyone's laughingstock previously. Now, we'll let him know that he won't get off scot-free for interfering in Warblood's matters. After saying so, Inkfeather shot a dazzling arrow into the sky, which was visible even from 10,000 yards away. Immediately afterward, the Warblood members patrolling on speedboats in the vicinity each took out a stone with strange runes engraved on it. They then began frenziedly pumping their mana into the stone. Suddenly, a storm brewed, blanketing the entire sea zone. Simultaneously, multiple barriers emerged from the ocean, thoroughly enveloping Feng's group of 4. An endless supply of water-type mana also bound them, the restriction weakening their basic attributes and physique by 30%. What a powerful restriction! Feng was a little surprised by this situation. There were very few magic arrays capable of affecting Tier 4 players significantly. Even a Master Magic Array would only be capable of reducing a Tier 4 player's basic attributes. It would hardly affect a Tier 4 player's physique. Nevertheless, the magic array used on them had reduced both their basic attributes and physique by a significant margin. This was truly an amazing magic array. Ha ha ha! Black Flame, you've really barged your way into hell now. Autumn Plant burst into delighted laughter when he saw that the magic barrier had taken effect. We originally intended this sea prison to be a present for Heaven's Blade Zwei. Now though, we're giving it to you. What do you think? Under normal circumstances, Autumn Plant would still have to be afraid of Feng. After all, Feng was the first player to reach Tier 4. Hence, Feng's understanding of Tier 4 classes should greatly surpass his own. There was also the fact that the moves Autumn Plant had employed against Tier 3 players would have hardly any effect on Tier 4 players. However, the situation was different now. The Sea Prison was a magic array capable of suppressing even Tier 4 existences significantly. While a 30% reduction of basic attributes couldn't be considered significant, a 30% reduction of physique was massive. Such a suppression would basically reduce a Tier 4 physique to the Tier 3 standard. With such a huge difference in physique, even if Feng possessed astonishing basic attributes, he wouldn't be a match for Autumn Plant. This sea prison is not bad, but you wasted it for nothing. After observing the runes on the barrier, Feng found that this ancient magic array's current performance could only be considered half-baked at best. At the very least, it needed over a dozen master magicians to exhibit its capabilities fully. What arrogance! Upon seeing Feng's nonchalant behavior, Autumn Plant brandished his staff. Death is already knocking on your door. I want to see just how long you can keep up your facade. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. After saying so, Autumn Plant summoned several dozen crimson chains that shot at Feng. Tier 4 legacy spell. Bloodbound Lock. However, just as the crimson chains were about to reach Feng, a ripple of mana came from his body and stopped all of the chains cold 1 meter away from him. Afterward, a voice entered Autumn Plant's ears. This binding spell is pretty good. Unfortunately, you used it on the wrong person. Chapter 2797. Splitting the sea. As soon as Feng finished speaking, the Warblood members spectating from a distance couldn't help gaping in shock at the scene playing out before them, their minds refusing to accept this was true. Even Heaven's Blades members felt as if they were dreaming when they saw this scene, having personally experienced the power of those crimson chains. Those chains carried immense power. Even a mythic monster should be incapable of struggling free of them. Moreover, evading those chains was also impossible. Nevertheless, the crimson chains Autumn Plant summoned actually failed to get within 1 meter of Feng. Moreover, they hadn't seen Feng make any movements. From their perspective, the chains seemed to be afraid of Feng and did not dare move closer to him. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Autumn Plant was dumbfounded as he looked at the scene before him. In fact, compared to the surrounding spectators, he was even more confused by this situation. After all, as the summoner of these chains, he knew that he had not held back in the slightest. There's no way he can stop a Tier 4 spell without using any skill or spell of his own. This is absolutely impossible. Glaring at Feng, Autumn Plant demanded, "What did you do?" Had Feng used a skill or spell to stop his spell, Autumn Plant would have found the situation reasonable. However, Feng clearly did not do anything. The man simply unleashed his mana to the surroundings, Yet that actually rendered the chains summoned by blood-bound lock incapable of getting close to him. At this moment, let alone Autumn Plant, even Yu Luo, Lifeless Thorn, and Solitary Nine were surprised by this situation. They knew that Xueqi was incredibly strong. After all, he had very nearly killed Lionheart in one move. However, they never thought that he could actually stop a Tier 4 binding spell just by unleashing his mana. This situation had thoroughly shattered their understanding of Xueqi. Can't you see it very clearly? Looking at Autumn Plant's horrified expression, Xueqi said calmly, as a Tier 4 Great Wizard, you should be well aware that a spell's performance is dependent on the difference between the quality of the spell's mana and that of the target's mana. Do you think a fragile rope can restrain an elephant? After obtaining Level 1 World Authority, aside from a slight improvement in his affinity with and control of mana, he had also gained a significant boost in his understanding of the operating principles of mana. Hence, he was now capable of condensing mana of much higher quality, and in much greater quantity. Now, the mana he could conjure was at least 50% stronger than what he could with just a 110% completion rate mana body. Thanks to this improvement, all mana that entered his mana domain was subject to his control. Autumn Plant's attempt to bind him with a Tier 4 binding spell that hadn't even reached a 100% completion rate was a complete and utter joke. Rather than relying on such a spell, Autumn Plant would be more effective if he tried to attack Xueqi with his staff. What do you mean? Xueqi's words confused Autumn Plant. A spell's performance was indeed dependent on the quality of its mana and of its target's mana. However, he was currently a Tier 4 Great Wizard. The spell he used was also at the Tier 4 standard. How could his spell not have any effect against a player of the same tier? What do I mean? Xueqi shook his head in disappointment. He had already given Autumn Plant a clear explanation, yet the latter still failed to understand the cause of his failure. All right then. I'll just let you feel it yourself. As soon as Xueqi finished speaking, a ripple of mana spread out from his body. The space within a 1,000-yard radius of Xueqi darkened. When looking at this darkened region from a distance, one would even see space within this region warping. Caught within Xueqi's mana domain, Autumn Plant suddenly felt his mind turning sluggish. He also felt as if his body had fallen into a mire, as the ambient mana had undergone a complete change. At this point, the mana around him couldn't even be considered mana. Unlike normal mana, this mana felt dark, murky, and silent. Surrounded by this mana, Autumn Plant very nearly retched in disgust, his complexion turning incomparably pale. No. This is impossible. How can you have such mana? When Autumn Plant looked at Xueqi now, his eyes were filled with fear and madness. He simply couldn't fathom how there could be such a person in this world. Meanwhile, upon seeing Autumn Plant rambling on like a lunatic while looking at Xueqi, Inkfeather immediately contacted him. Autumn, what happened on your side? Inkfeather stared at Autumn Plant's crazed behavior in confusion. Do you need our help? Autumn Plant had clearly been normal just a second ago. However, as soon as the dark space appeared, he began behaving abnormally. No. Run. Run quickly. Autumn Plant urged frantically when he received Inkfeather's call. He's not human. He's not human at all. Not human? What do you mean? Inkfeather grew even more confused at Autumn Plant's words. His mana is too terrifying. We are absolutely no match for him. Autumn Plant exclaimed with a horrified expression. You need to escape quickly. Immediately notify the commander and have him contact Secret Hand. Only Secret Hand can go up against him. Notify Secret Hand? Is there a need to go that far? At this point, Inkfeather suspected that something was wrong with Autumn Plant's mental state. Their opponent was only a Tier 4 Sword Emperor. Even if Xueqi was indeed the first player to reach Tier 4, there shouldn't be any need to seek help from the Secret Hand Association, the largest NPC force based on Dragonheart Island. After all, Warblood still had plenty of trump cards in reserve. Even if they couldn't get rid of Xueqi shouldn't think of breaking out of the sea prison. Hostile players caught inside the sea prison would have their stamina and concentration drained rapidly. Even a Tier 4 player wouldn't last more than 10 minutes within it. And if a player's stamina and concentration zeroed out, they wouldn't be able to move their body at all. They might even die outright. Hence, even if their team was no match for Xueqi in a frontal confrontation, they could still whittle him to death inside the sea prison. When Inkfeather showed no intention of listening to his words, Autumn Plant felt like he was about to go crazy. No. Listen to me. You don't know just how Pa-11 before Autumn Plant could say anything more. Xueqi finally took action. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The swordsman unsheathed the abyssal blade, raised the magic weapon slightly, and executed a vertical slash at the space in front of him. First sword. Light shadow. Suddenly, an illusory great sword several hundred meters long appeared in the sky and fell toward Autumn Plant, leaving a dark void that divided the world into two in its wake. Before anyone could react, the sea prison trapping Xueqi's group split in half, and a massive void spanning over 1,000 yards opened up in the ocean. Seawater then flooded into the dark void, creating spectacular waterfalls. Surging waves carried the nearby ships toward this spatial tear, and the ships that fell into the void had their crews instantly vaporized. The 1,000+ war blood members maintaining the sea prison's magic array spat out blood on the spot and fell into a mentally weakened state. It was evident that they had suffered a severe backlash from the barriers breaking. Meanwhile, a dark void had replaced the area Autumn Plant originally occupied. As for Autumn Plant himself, he was nowhere in sight. Chapter 2798. Another Tier 4. No. This is impossible. Inkfeather and the other Warblood members were thunderstruck by the scene before them. The sea prison was an ancient magic array capable of trapping even superior mythic monsters, yet it had shattered from just one attack. Moreover, this same attack had also annihilated Autumn Plant, a Tier 4 great wizard. How could they possibly believe this? Xueqi and Autumn Plant were both Tier 4 players, so how could there be such a huge disparity between them? Not to mention, Xueqi had executed his attack while under the sea prison's suppression. Even if Autumn Plant truly wasn't a match for Xueqi, he shouldn't be utterly powerless to resist the attack. Nevertheless, let alone putting up a fight, Autumn Plant couldn't even escape. Divine Shadow and the other Heaven's Blade members also couldn't help gaping in shock at this scene. After watching Xueqi's heaven-splitting slash, they finally understood the true strength of Tier 4 existences and why God's Domain's NPCs would behave so fearfully and respectfully toward Tier 4 existences. Xueqi had transformed the terrain with just one attack. If a full-blown fight ensued between two Tier 4 existences, the effect the fight would have on the surroundings would be unimaginable. Vice Commander, what should we do now? The sea prison is already broken, and Vice Commander Autumn has been killed. I'm afraid that we, a level 122, Tier 3 assassin asked worriedly as he looked at Inkfeather. Have everyone retreat, Inkfeather said, gritting her teeth. Also, notify the commander of everything that happened here. Black Flame is no longer someone we can handle. We need Secret Hand's assistance. Understood. The Tier 3 assassin breathed out a sigh of relief when he heard Inkfeather's words. If they were to fight Xueqi, they would die without question. Subsequently, Warblood's members frantically retreated to Dragonheart Island, many of them even using Tier 3 instantaneous movement scrolls or other life-saving scrolls. Their reaction was because they knew very clearly just how terrifying a Tier 4 player could be. While more than 3,000 yards might separate them from Xueqi right now, the swordsman could probably close the distance in just a few seconds if he flew at full speed. Black Flame. Warblood will remember this transgression. We will be waiting for you on Dragonheart Island. Inkfeather bellowed. With Xueqi's group rapidly approaching, she promptly activated her Tier 3 instantaneous movement scroll and disappeared, abandoning the bound Heaven's Blades members. 2 seconds after Inkfeather disappeared, Xueqi's group of 4 arrived before Divine Shadow and the others. Those people were so arrogant before, yet they ran away even faster than rabbits. Solitary 9 burst into laughter when he saw that none of Warblood's Tier 3 experts remained in the vicinity. In response, Lifeless Thorn also laughed and said, "It's normal. They know that they'll just die even if they stay behind. After all, even their sole Tier 4 expert died, so Tier 3 players like themselves wouldn't be able to do anything." The strength Xueqi displayed was truly astonishing. Let alone Warblood's members, even Lifeless Thorn himself was shocked. During the fight with the infant golden dragon, Xueqi had forcibly cancelled his summoning. The backlash had drastically reduced both his concentration and basic attributes throughout the raid. And although he had activated a berserk skill near the end of the raid, the skill only allowed him to just barely participate in the fight. Hence, one could say that Xueqi had never exerted his normal strength in the entire infant dragon raid. However, when Xueqi went up against Autumn Plant, he had already fully recovered. Only, Lifeless Thorn had never imagined that Xueqi had already become so strong. Now, Lifeless Thorn wouldn't find it strange if Xueqi could go toe-to-toe against a superior mythic monster. After all, the attack Xueqi executed earlier was simply astonishing. It definitely carried power at the Tier 5 standard. Guild Leader Black Flame, I am Vice Commander Divine Shadow of the Heaven's Blade Adventurer Team. I really have to thank you for your help this time. If not for you, we would have definitely been imprisoned by war blood for 15 days, Divine Shadow, who had been freed from his restraints, hurriedly stepped forward to thank Xueqi. At this moment, the only feeling in his heart was a deep sense of awe. In the past, Divine Shadow only considered Xueqi a local tyrant who had better luck than others. In his opinion, so long as he got promoted to Tier 4, he wouldn't be inferior to Xueqi in any way. However, Divine Shadow now found his previous thoughts laughable. After all, in terms of strength, Xueqi and he were like the sun and a candle. Even if he really managed to get promoted to Tier 4, he doubted he could last a single move against Xueqi. As for Cleansing Flame, when she looked at Xueqi, complicated emotions momentarily filled her heart. Previously, it was only thanks to Xueqi's help that Heaven's Blade had managed to survive the existential threat it faced. Originally, she thought that with the significant improvements she made during this period, she had shortened the gap between herself and Xueqi. However, it seemed that the gap between them had widened even further instead. In fact, Xueqi had become so strong that she could no longer grasp just how powerful he was exactly. It's nothing. I just happened to pass by, Xueqi said, chuckling as he looked at Divine Shadow. Team leader Yu Luo and I were trapped in the same place for some time. After we left that place, we appeared near Dragonheart Island. Can you tell me what Dragonheart Island's present situation is like? Although the World Stone allowed him to log in and out of God's domain anytime he wanted, he had not logged off for several consecutive days because he had focused on grinding for levels. Meanwhile, God's domain was a game that was constantly changing. Several days was more than enough time for significant changes to sweep through the entire God's domain, let alone a small area like Dragonheart Island. Dragonheart Island was a location he had paid constant attention to as well as one of Zero Wing's development focuses. The World Tower on Dragonheart Island was incredibly special. Even Tier 5 players could benefit from it because there were plenty of ancient ruins hidden inside. In addition, once communication between the two main continents of God's domain increased in frequency, Dragonheart Island would become an important trade hub. Hence, he had established roots on Dragonheart Island a long time ago. However, due to the many matters he had to deal with on the eastern continent, he had no choice but to leave Dragonheart Island's matters to someone else. As a result, Zero Wing had never been able to develop properly on Dragonheart Island. Now that his strength had undergone a qualitative transformation and he also possessed massive wealth, he would naturally have to write Zero Wing's development on Dragonheart Island into his agenda. After all, Dragonheart Island had plenty of rare and precious resources. In fact, the rare basic materials that he needed for the construction of the small mobile fortress could all be found on the island. This was also one of the reasons why he had decided to head to Dragonheart Island directly. I see. Realization dawned upon Divine Shadow when he heard Xueqi's words. He now roughly understood why Yu Luo was with Xueqi's party. He then shook his head and sighed. Guild Leader Black Flame, Dragonheart Island has already become Warblood's private playground. Outside forces are unable to interfere with Dragonheart Island's affairs at all. Even Heaven's Blade has been forced to disband because of Warblood. Is it because of an NPC force? Xueqi asked. Somehow, Blood Oath actually managed to partner up with the Secret Hand Association, Dragonheart Island's strongest NPC force. Because of this, even Dragonheart Island's local superpowers have to abide by Warbloods will to avoid getting targeted, Divine Shadow answered, his heart brimming with hatred toward Warblood. If not for the Secret Hand Association, Warblood couldn't have forced Heaven's Blade to disband no matter what. Even if Warblood had Autumn Plant, it would still be incredibly difficult for one Tier 4 player to deal with the entirety of Heaven's Blade inside the vast World Tower. Naturally, it was also impossible for one Tier 4 Great Wizard to besiege a fortress. However, it was a different story for NPC forces. Even the weakest NPC force operating on Dragonheart Island had several Tier 4 NPCs under its command. What more the Secret Hand Association? According to the information Heaven's Blade found, the Secret Hand Association had as many as 14 Tier 4 NPCs. Moreover, some of these Tier 4 NPCs even held considerably high positions in Dragonheart City. Hence, it was a piece of cake for the Secret Hand Association to deal with a player force like Heaven's Blade in Dragonheart City. Most importantly, after the system's major update, NPCs no longer had any restrictions placed on them. While NPCs might still hesitate to take action inside an NPC city, once outside the city, NPCs could freely attack players. Therefore, any player force that dared to oppose Warblood would have their members hunted by the Secret Hand Association outside Dragonheart City. However, getting hunted and killed by the Secret Hand Association's NPCs still wasn't the worst part. In fact, getting killed would have been preferable. After all, these NPCs could actually imprison players for up to 15 natural days. Let alone Tier 3 peak experts. Even Tier 3 Apex experts couldn't afford such a penalty. I see. No wonder Warblood dares to be so arrogant. After hearing Divine Shadow's explanation, Xueqi more or less understood his frustration. Even in his previous life, such occurrences had been prevalent after God's Domain's first major update. Now that most players had yet to reach even Tier 3, they would find it even more impossible to oppose NPC forces. Guild Leader Black Flame, now that you've killed Autumn Plant, I'm certain Inkfeather will relay this matter to Blood Oath. Since they know they're no match for you, they will definitely contact Secret Hand. However, Secret Hand should take some time to react. Hence, my suggestion is that we leave Dragonheart Island's vicinity during this time. That way, those NPCs won't be able to do anything against us. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Although the Secret Hand Association was powerful, so long as they left the association's sphere of influence, the association's NPCs would most likely stop pursuing them. At worst, they would no longer be able to mingle on Dragonheart Island. However, God's Domain was a massive world. They could easily head to other locations to grind for levels. It wouldn't be too late for them to seek payback once they raised their strength. No. I won't be leaving with you. I still have some matters I need to deal with on Dragonheart Island, Xueqi said, shaking his head. Smiling, he continued. Moreover, I have a debt to collect from Warblood. After Xueqi finished speaking, Yu Luo added in a determined tone, that's right. I'm also going to Dragonheart Island to meet with the commander. I will definitely make Warblood pay. Divine Shadow couldn't help growing anxious at Yu Luo's words. They had gone to great lengths to escape from Dragonheart Island. If Yu Luo were to head to Dragonheart Island now, it would be a one-way trip. Yu Luo, stop fooling around. Guild Leader Black Flame is a Tier 4 player, so he might not have any problems, but you are. An astonishing aura suddenly burst forth from Yu Luo's body, interrupting Divine Shadow and subjecting him and the others to powerful pressure. The aura Yu Luo released was even more frightening than Autumn Plant's. Divine Shadow was dumbfounded when he sensed Yu Luo's aura. Only after a long time did he manage to ask, "You've reached Tier 4? Having status in an NPC city meant obtaining a position carrying actual power in the city. As for the noble ranks players gained previously, they were merely empty titles after the major update took place. Noble ranks no longer granted players actual power in an NPC city, only benefits such as the ability to recruit personal guards. Take Xueqi's visit to the Twin Towers Kingdom's capital city, for example. The way the senior administrator of the city hall there referred to him was completely different from how most NPCs referred to him before the major update. The senior administrator hadn't addressed Xueqi with honorifics such as Bronze Legatee, Lord Earl, etc. Instead, the NPC merely addressed him as Sir. Only after Xueqi had taken out the War God's Temple certification did the NPC change his address to Lord Guild Leader. This was because he was the guild leader of a guild the War God's Temple recognized officially. In NPC cities, his status was roughly equivalent to the deputy city lords. Without the War God's Temple certification, though, Xueqi would merely be an insignificant existence to the senior administrator. Of course, had Xueqi revealed his Tier 4 ranking, he would similarly receive different treatment. Only, compared to that of players holding actual positions of power, his treatment would still be slightly inferior. After all, no individual Tier 4 player would dare cause a ruckus in an NPC city unless they were tired of living. Hence, so long as an NPC wasn't an adventurer that frequently operated out in the fields, they wouldn't fear Tier 4 players at all. Alright, you can come with us. Divine Shadow couldn't help feeling a little helpless as he looked at Cleansing Flame. However, what she had said was also true. Previously, if not for Cleansing Flame holding the position of a squadron captain in Dragonheart City's Dragonheart Knight Legion, they would have had trouble even stepping out of the city's entrance, let alone escaping Dragonheart Island. Afterward, Divine Shadow secretly led Xueqi's group back to Dragonheart City. As for the other Heaven's Blade members, they used this opportunity to depart from Dragonheart Island's vicinity quickly to avoid the Secret Hand Association's pursuit. Dragonheart Island, Dragonheart City. Due to the system's major update, Dragonheart City had become much livelier. Now, NPCs of foreign races were everywhere in the city's port, and previously scarce Tier 3 NPCs crowded the port. Most of these NPCs were at level 130, with some even reaching level 150. They were practically comparable to the Tier 3 NPC guards of Dragonheart City. Meanwhile, Dragonheart City's player population had also increased significantly. This was especially true of Tier 3 independent experts. Roughly 30% of the Tier 3 independent experts operating in the major sea zones surrounding Dragonheart Island gathered here. As for the reason, firstly, Dragonheart City's trade market was much more prosperous than other locations. Here, one could purchase many items that normally couldn't be found in the outside world. For example, Dragonheart City's auction house sold epic weapons and equipment usable by players. The only problem was that the currency used here was not the standard coins but ancient coins. Secondly, the World Tower's fourth underground floor had Tier 4 legacy lands. Moreover, aside from independent experts, many of God's Domain superpowers had also dispatched their members to develop on Dragonheart Island. Because of this situation, Dragonheart City most likely housed the largest number of Tier 3 players out of the various cities in God's Domain. This was also one of the reasons why Xueqi decided to visit Dragonheart City in person. However, before Xueqi and the others could enter Dragonheart City, they came across Inkfeather once more. At this time, Inkfeather and several hundred other Warblood members were carefully inspecting the players trying to enter the city. Even Blood Oath was standing by the entrance and quietly observing the moving crowd. His appearance at the entrance garnered a lot of attention from the surrounding players. What's going on? Why is Blood Oath here? I heard that someone killed one of Warblood's executives in the nearby waters. Blood Oath must have come to deal with those offenders personally. Crap! Who's the daring bastard that killed Warblood's members? The players began a quiet discussion among themselves as they looked at Blood Oath. They admired the person who dared kill Warblood's executive. After all, even the superpowers had to behave themselves around Warblood on Dragonheart Island. Otherwise, they would meet a tragic end. A single death definitely wouldn't be enough to compensate for the offense of killing one of Warblood's executives near Dragonheart Island. Hush! Keep your voice down. Don't you see that man beside Blood Oath? A level 122, Tier 3 ranger said, berating his guildmates. Pointing at a stalwart man clad in silvery knight armor standing beside Blood Oath, the ranger said, "That person is Sabrid, one of the Secret Hand Association's Tier 4 NPCs. He is also one of the vice-commanders of the city's Knight Legion. If he hears you, you'll be locked up for several days." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. At the ranger's warning, his party members promptly stopped speaking. The name Sabrid was one they were very familiar with. This NPC was precisely why the various superpowers seeking to establish roots on Dragonheart Island had suffered severe losses. These foreign superpowers had many of their Tier 3 experts caught and jailed in Dragonheart City's prison for 3 days. The reason for their imprisonment was that they had offended Sabrid. Damn it! Blood Oath actually managed to get Sabrid here in such a short time. Divine Shadow's complexion darkened when he saw the knight standing beside Blood Oath. That Sabrid will definitely cause all sorts of problems for us to prevent us from entering the city, and so long as we show even the slightest sign of aggression, he'll abuse his authority to have guards capture us. Before Divine Shadow could finish explaining, Blood Oath noticed Xueqi's group, and a sly smile appeared on his face. "Lord Sabrid, I found those troublemakers," Blood Oath said to Sabrid as he pointed at Xueqi's group. "It's those people. That man standing in the lead even let Heaven's Blade's remnants get away, disrupting Warblood's expansion plans completely." "Is that so?" Sabrid, who looked to be in his early 40s, looked at the location Blood Oath indicated. Narrowing his eyes, he said to the soldier standing beside him, "Bring them to me. If they resist, you know what to do, right?" Leave it to us, Vice Commander. The level 150, Tier 3 soldier smiled and nodded. He then led a team of around a dozen guards and approached Shifeng's group. Chapter 2800. Silent entrance. Upon seeing the squad of NPC soldiers walk out of the entrance, the Warblood members standing by the gate looked at Shifeng's group triumphantly. The soldier squad consisted of 12 level 150, Tier 3 NPC soldiers. These NPCs were already close to 30 levels higher than the current average level of Tier 3 players in God's domain. In addition, these NPCs also possess the identity of Dragonheart City's soldiers. After the major update, the NPC soldiers of NPC cities were no longer as rigid as before, enforcing all rules thoroughly and behaving impartially in their judgment. Instead, these NPC soldiers had become humanized, bending the rules to their liking. They could be strict with some and lenient with others. Meanwhile, so long as their actions fell within the permissible range of the rules, players would be utterly helpless against them. Vice Commander Feather, let's see how Black Flame can continue acting arrogantly. Snowy Afterglow, who had reached level 123, said to Ink Feather as he watched the NPC soldiers approach Shifeng's group. Even if he's Tier 4, he will still have to behave here. Black Flame isn't a simple person. If he can restrain his temper, with his status as a Tier 4 player, these soldiers won't dare make things too difficult for him, Ink Feather said, shaking her head. Everything will depend on Black Flame's subsequent actions. Forbearance was a basic quality leaders of guilds possessed. As the guild leader of Zero Wing, Shifeng naturally possessed this quality too. If Shifeng decided to behave this time, the means they could use against him wouldn't be very effective. If they failed to exact their revenge on Shifeng now, the only thing they could do was ambush him outside Dragonheart Island. He has always been arrogant. I doubt he'll tolerate this humiliation, Snowy Afterglow said. Even if he can, so long as he dares show even a little bit of resistance or behave disrespectfully to Lord Sabrid, we'll be able to take care of him. Let's hope so. Ink Feather also hoped that Shifeng would choose not to tolerate the NPC guards' harassment. That way, they would have an easy time dealing with him. While the soldiers were approaching Shifeng's group, the surrounding players who saw this scene couldn't help stopping to spectate the situation. What's the matter with these soldiers? They can actually leave the entrance on their own initiative? Wait, that assassin seems to be Divine Shadow, one of Heaven's Blade's vice commanders. What? Heaven's Blade's members actually took the initiative to show themselves? Are they tired of living? The surrounding players recognized Divine Shadow in no time at all and were astonished. After all, Warblood had long since placed a bounty on all of Heaven's Blade's members in Dragonheart City. By showing up at the city's entrance now, Heaven's Blade's members were basically throwing themselves into the jaws of death. Now that these NPC soldiers are going straight for them, they're seriously doomed. These NPCs are first-rate when it comes to making life difficult for others. They interrogated me for 2 whole hours the last time I came here. If I hadn't bribed them with a magic crystal, I would have most likely had to wait for a few more hours before I could enter the city. These soldiers are probably the Secret Hand Association's members as well. If Heaven's Blade's members get detained, it definitely won't end with just a few hours of interrogation. These soldiers will most likely corner them until they speak out in retaliation. And if they do that, they'll be jailed right away. Seeing the NPC soldiers taking the initiative to walk away from the entrance, the surrounding players looked at Shifeng's group in pity. However, none of them stepped forward to help. After all, it would be an express train to hell if they did so. While the surrounding players were discussing quietly among themselves, the 12 NPC soldiers had surrounded Shifeng's group. Dragonheart City is in chaos right now, so our superior has instructed us to tighten inspections to prevent people from making trouble in the city. Not only are you bunch acting suspiciously, but you are even concealing your identities with cloaks. Remove your cloaks and come with us, said the rough-looking guard heading the squad. Sneering, he added, rest assured, the interrogation will be over quickly. It'll only take around a dozen hours, so it won't delay you for too long. Oh right. Just in case, please open your spatial bags and let us inspect them. We cannot let you bring any prohibited items into the city. As soon as the head soldier finished speaking, the other guards began smiling as well. That's right. Hurry up and open your bags. Don't worry. We won't take any of your items. We'll only take a look at them. Right. It's just for an inspection. This is for Dragonheart City's safety. The several NPC soldiers laughed as they looked at Xueqi. Meanwhile, Divine Shadow's complexion turned ashen when he heard the soldiers' words. He had never imagined that the Secret Hand Association's NPCs would be so ruthless. A spatial bag was a player's greatest secret. Revealing the contents of a player's bag to other players would not only potentially attract trouble, but also expose their trump cards. "Excuse me, but we don't plan on entering Dragonheart City," Divine Shadow said, rejecting the soldiers' demand outright. There was no way they could allow the soldiers to inspect their bags. This was especially true for Xueqi, the guild leader of Zero Wing. It was evident that these soldiers were trying to pick a fight with them. Now, their only choice was to abandon their plan to enter Dragonheart City. However, the head soldier smiled when he heard Divine Shadow's refusal. "It doesn't matter whether you enter the city or not. In fact, you bunch look even more suspicious now. So, there is an even greater need for you to be checked. You'd best open your spatial bags quick. Otherwise, my brothers and I will personally take action," the head soldier said, raising his hand. Immediately, the 11 other soldiers gripped their weapons and released their killing intent. However, as these soldiers gripped their weapons, Cleansing Flame stepped forward. She then took out a bronze token from her bag. "I am Cleansing Flame, a captain of the Dragonheart Knight Legion. These people are my companions. I can prove that they have no problems," Cleansing Flame said. In a slightly annoyed tone she continued, "Moreover, you people from the City Defense Legion are responsible for maintaining order within the city, not outside. You are overstepping your boundaries." When Cleansing Flame took out her Dragonheart Knight token, Divine Shadow breathed out a sigh of relief, glad that he had brought her along. Otherwise, they would have gotten caught in the Secret Hand Association's trap. As Dragonheart City's trump card legion, the Dragonheart Knight Legion was far superior to the City Defense Knight Legion. Moreover, the City Defense Knight Legion did not have the authority to inspect members of the Dragonheart Knight Legion. The Dragonheart Knight Legion? Looking at Cleansing Flame, the head soldier smiled nonchalantly and said, "Since you are a member of the Dragonheart Knight Legion, we naturally have no right to inspect you. However, that is not the case for your companions. They are acting suspiciously and are even wearing cloaks. As Dragonheart City's first line of defense, we have a responsibility to maintain the city's safety. Hence we cannot leave them be. They must be checked." The soldier's words enraged Cleansing Flame. "I will report this to Commander Anos." "Go tell him then." "I believe Commander Anos will understand our painstaking efforts," the head soldier said, smiling. "However, before that, your companions must undergo inspection. I will give you only 10 seconds to consider. If you don't open your bags yourselves, don't blame us for doing it for you." As the head soldier finished speaking, the other soldiers readied their weapons. It was evident that they did not plan on giving Xueqi's group any chance to escape. Meanwhile, when the surrounding players saw this scene, they gasped. "How ruthless!" Sure enough, nobody can afford to offend Warblood on Dragonheart Island. No wonder even the superpowers dare not disrespect Warblood on Dragonheart Island. Although many of the players present would normally suffer at the hands of these NPC soldiers, the soldiers would only put them through long hours of interrogation, at most. This was definitely the first time the players had seen these soldiers draw their weapons against players. Ha ha ha. Amazing. Amazing. As expected of Secret Hand's members. I want to see what that black flame is going to do now. Snowy Afterglow burst into laughter when he saw this scene. I heard that black flame has many treasures on him. If we can get him to reveal those treasures, all our efforts this time would definitely be worthwhile. Ink Feather also nodded in agreement with Snowy Afterglow's words. In reality, even she did not think that the Secret Hand Association would be so ruthless. Now, Xueqi was truly between a rock and a hard place. Whether he chose to anger the guards or reveal his spatial bag for everyone to see, he would still suffer in the end. Black Flame. Now, it's my turn to let you know what it feels like to live in misery. When Blood Oath saw the scene playing out before him, the smile on his face grew even brighter. Previously, when Xueqi had killed him during the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's conference, Blood Oath's reputation had plummeted on Dragonheart Island. However, the tables had turned now. After partnering with the Secret Hand Association, Blood Oath had always hoped that Xueqi would come to Dragonheart Island. To ensure this happened, He had even had his subordinates provoke Zero Wing frequently. Now, his chance for vengeance had arrived. This was also only the first step of Blood Oath's vengeance. Even if Xuefeng agreed to the soldier's demand, he still had plenty of things prepared for Xuefeng afterward. It wouldn't matter even if Xuefeng was a Tier 4 player. Dragonheart City was different from the average NPC city. In terms of combat power, Dragonheart City was even stronger than the capital cities of some empires. Moreover, as Dragonheart City was a neutral city, the identities and positions one held in kingdoms and cities did not matter here. Only Dragonheart City's identities and statuses. This was also why the various superpowers had no choice but to submit to war blood. While everyone was secretly discussing the situation, Divine Shadow whispered to Xuefeng, "I'm sorry for this situation, Guild Leader Black Flame. I'll hold them back afterward, so run away when you get the chance. These soldiers won't dare abandon their post, so as long as you leave Dragonheart Island's vicinity, they won't continue chasing you." Their only way out of this situation now was to flee. Confronting these NPC soldiers would only mean death for them. If they did that, they would be playing into Blood Oath's hands. Hence, Divine Shadow decided to exchange his own life for everyone else's freedom. "No, that won't be necessary," Xuefeng said, shaking his head. "Leave the rest to me." Guild Leader Black Flame? Divine Shadow was a little confused as he looked at Xuefeng. There was clearly no room for reconciliation between them and the NPC soldiers. Aside from escaping, he simply couldn't figure out how they could get out of this situation. At this moment, let alone Divine Shadow, even Yu Luo found this situation strange. She couldn't understand what Xuefeng could possibly do in this situation, either. When the head soldier saw Xuefeng stepping forward, he grinned and asked, "What? Have you made up your mind?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Xuefeng was the person Vice Commander Sabrit had singled out. No matter what Xuefeng's answer was, the head soldier would have ways to make things difficult for him. "Made up my mind?" Chuckling, Xuefeng said, "Indeed, I have made up my mind." "Good." Nodding, the head soldier said, "Then, open up your spatial bag." As soon as the head soldier finished speaking, Xuefeng made his move. The next moment, a fleeting flash appeared before Xuefeng, and the head soldier's body got bisected. The soldier's 20 million HP instantly fell to zero, the two halves of his body spraying blood all over the place as they fell to the ground. Chapter 2801. Combating a Tier 4 NPC. He killed the NPC? How dare he? Everyone present was taken aback when they saw the head soldier bisected. Even Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame had their mouths hanging wide open, neither of them having expected Xuefeng to take action. Moreover, not only did Xuefeng take action, but he had even directly killed an NPC soldier. This was simply, "This guy is doomed. He's definitely dead." He actually killed one of Dragonheart City's NPC soldiers. This won't end with just a few weeks' imprisonment. Dragonheart City was a neutral city. Hence, its management was much stricter than that of NPC cities in kingdoms and empires. Before the major system update took place, players who killed another player or NPC within Dragonheart City would not only be killed on the spot but also be prohibited from logging into the game for a month. And when they could log back into the game, they would lose 10 levels and have their souls placed into a weakened state for 10 days. This penalty would basically cripple a player's account. Now, not only did Xuefeng commit murder after the system update, but the person he killed was even an NPC soldier. At this point, everyone no longer dared imagine what kind of punishment he would receive should he be killed or caught. Ink Feather and the other Warblood members standing by the entrance were caught off guard by Xuefeng's actions. How much courage does he possess? Ink Feather couldn't believe her eyes as she took in Xuefeng's casual appearance. Did he lose his mind? She had thought of the possibility of Xuefeng resisting the NPC soldiers and escaping. However, the possibility of him killing an NPC soldier had never occurred to her. Yet, Xuefeng had executed this feat so decisively. As for Blood Oath, when he saw this scene, he became ecstatic. Good. As expected of the first player to get promoted to Tier 4. Blood Oath sneered. "Unfortunately, today will be the day you fall." However, before everyone could recover from the surprise of seeing Xuefeng kill the head soldier, Xuefeng brandished the abyssal blade once more. The next moment, a galaxy of stars appeared around Xueqi and enveloped the 11 NPC soldiers remaining of the squad. Swords orbit. Damages exceeding 50 million appeared above the Tier 3 NPCs' heads one after another, the 11 NPC soldiers getting killed instantly. A bunch of useless fools. Do you think Dragonheart City's rules have any use against me? Xueqi said as he glanced at the fallen NPC soldiers indifferently. He then sheathed the abyssal blade casually as if he hadn't done anything to speak of. If it were before he had entered the ancient god's domain, he would still have to be wary of Dragonheart City's rules. However, he no longer had such worries now. At Xueqi's words, a deathly silence momentarily enveloped the surrounding area. He's nuts. He's definitely nuts. Who is this guy? He actually dares slaughter Dragonheart City's NPC soldiers? When the spectators saw Xueqi's actions, some felt crazed, some felt fearful, some felt excited, and some felt awed. One thing was for certain, though Xueqi's feat of killing 11 NPC soldiers in one go would be forever etched in their minds. Without a doubt, Xueqi was the most ruthless player in God's domain. The surrounding players became curious about Xueqi's identity. Meanwhile, when the silver-armored knight Sabrid saw this scene, his eyes turned bloodshot, and the intensity of his aura skyrocketed. He no longer suppressed his aura, thoroughly displaying the power of a level 160, Tier 4 NPC. His aura was so overbearing that everyone nearby shuddered involuntarily. Outrageous! You dare lay hands on the City Defense Knight Legion. Don't even think of leaving this place alive today. Sabrid bellowed as he leaped into the air. Simultaneously, the other NPC soldiers stationed at the entrance also took action, their numbers exceeding 100. We're really doomed this time. Divine Shadow despaired when he saw Sabrid taking action. He couldn't understand why Xueqi had acted so rashly. Their group stood no chance against a level 160, Tier 4 NPC, even though Xueqi was Tier 4. After all, NPCs possessed not only higher basic attributes than players but also superior mana control. Their weapons and equipment were likewise superior to those of players in general. However, while Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame were despairing over this matter, two voices of complaint entered their ears. Guild leader, you're too fast. That's right. You should have told us in advance if you were going to attack. At least give us some time to prepare. The next moment, both Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9 took out their weapons in frustration, evidently intending to fight these NPC soldiers. Have they lost their minds too? Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame were on the brink of mental collapse at this moment. Xueqi was famous for being an arrogant guild leader, so while his reaction was shocking, it was still within the realm of expectations. However, what was up with the two players following Xueqi? Yu Luo, though, did not appear surprised by Lifeless Thorn and Solitary 9's actions. She, too, grabbed her staff and said quietly to Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame, "Vice Commander, Flame, wait behind us. I'll deal with the NPCs coming at us." BUIL 11/B At Yu Luo's words, Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame turned to the cleric in surprise and confusion. What had become of this world? Was this really the same Yu Luo they knew? Seeing the two's horrified eyes, Yu Luo smiled and consoled, "Don't worry. Nothing will happen. We're just dealing with a bunch of NPC soldiers." Out of everyone present, she reacted the calmest to Xueqi's actions. As she had reached Tier 4 herself, she understood quite well that Tier 4 powerhouses were no pushovers. Even the NPCs in the ancient god's domain didn't dare offend Tier 4 players. Yet, these Tier 3 NPCs in the modern god's domain actually dared do so. They were simply tired of living. After all, even the kings of kingdoms dared not casually offend Tier 4 powerhouses. She had to admit that while some NPCs had grown smarter after gaining conscious thought, some had grown dumber as well. Either that or pushing around Tier 3 players had become a habit for these Tier 3 NPCs, and they now assumed that the existence known as players were pushovers that didn't know how to retaliate. The fact that players still had the mindset that NPCs shouldn't be provoked had most likely contributed to this misconception as well. However, after experiencing life in the ancient god's domain, Yu Luo understood very clearly that god's domain never had any absolute rules. The only absolutes were strength and status. In the ancient god's domain, instances of players killing NPCs occurred frequently. Even killing city lords wouldn't be a problem so long as one could bear the consequences and had the strength necessary to accomplish the feat. Read latest chapters at Xueqi World. Hence, she found it laughable that Warblood thought it could rule over Dragonheart City without fear just because it had gained the support of an NPC force. Warblood was utterly ignorant of the fact that after players reached Tier 4, they would be living in a completely different world from Tier 3 players. At this time, Sabrid had already arrived in the air above Shifeng's group and was looking at Shifeng with anger in his eyes. This was because even he hadn't expected that Shifeng would dare kill the soldiers. Furthermore, he would be held responsible for their deaths. Unable to hold back his anger, he bellowed, "Foolish heaven-blessed individual. Do you think nobody can punish you just because you've reached Tier 4? None of you will escape today." After saying so, Sabrid unslung the snowy white greatsword. He carried on his back and executed a slash at Shifeng. A sword-light shot at Shifeng, leaving behind a black tear in space that extended hundreds of yards away. The power of this attack could heavily injure even a mythic monster of the same level. Tier 4 skill, Sky-Splitting Flash. Well said. Looking at Sabrid's approaching attack, Shifeng said leisurely, however, "You provoked the wrong person." After saying so, Shifeng unsheathed the Light of Two Worlds and brandished it. Chapter 2802. Power of Two Worlds Swords Orbit. Boom. When the two attacks collided, a powerful shockwave spread to several hundred yards away. Even the nearby Tier 3 experts stumbled a few steps back, while the Tier 2 players went flying several dozen yards. He blocked it. Who is he? The spectating players were stunned when they saw Shifeng still standing in his original position. Despite going up against a level 160, Tier 4 NPC's Tier 4 skill, Shifeng was actually an even match, emerging from the exchange unscathed. At this time, let alone the spectators, even Sabrid was surprised by this situation. Surprised. Looking at Sabrid's slightly bewildered expression, Shifeng smiled faintly and said, "It seems that the vice-commander of Dragonheart City's City Defense Knight Legion only amounts to this much." However, despite saying such words, Shifeng dared not be careless around Sabrid. The Light of Two Worlds had indeed increased his basic attributes and the power of his sword-type skill significantly. Thanks to it and the several other fragmented legendary items he equipped, his basic attributes reached an astonishing level. Although he still wasn't a match for superior mythic monsters of the same level, he wasn't that far off, either. However, Sabrid was at level 160, 20 levels higher than Shifeng. In terms of basic attributes, Shifeng definitely lost to Sabrid by a large margin. Hence, the only way he could beat the NPC was by relying on his powerful mana and superior combat techniques. "Boy, you are courting death." Sabrid grew even more enraged at Shifeng's words. Suddenly, the mana within a 1,000-yard radius began gathering around Sabrid in a frenzy. It was evident that the knight had not used his full strength for the previous attack. After the gathered mana reached a critical point, Sabrid instantly transformed into several dozen afterimages that surrounded Shifeng. The NPC was dazzlingly fast. Tier 4 skill, Broken Shadow. At this time, even Shifeng couldn't tell which of these afterimages was the real Sabrid. It felt as if the NPC had truly split into several dozen clones of himself. Before Shifeng could react, fiery runes appeared on Sabrid's snowy white greatsword. The flames the runes gave off incinerating even space itself. Tier 4 taboo skill, Starfire Blade. The next moment, every one of Sabrid's afterimages executed a slash. Despite the Starfire Blade being effective for only one attack in reality, Sabrid had turned it into several dozen attacks. Amazing. As expected of a Knight Legion's vice-commander, he actually managed to fuse his Tier 4 skills to such an extent. Shifeng couldn't help being in awe when he saw the several dozen attacks coming at him from all directions. Combining two skills was much more difficult than combining two spells. However, so long as one succeeded, one could dramatically increase the effectiveness of the skills. Disappear. Suddenly, crimson divine runes lit up all over the sword, releasing a dazzling and mesmerizing brilliance. As this dazzling light bloomed, a deathly silence enveloped the world around Shifeng. Even time itself seemed to flow significantly slower. Subsequently, Shifeng swung the Light of Two Worlds at Sabrid. World Breaker. Boom. A strange light instantly penetrated the descending black holes like a hot knife through butter before landing on Sabrid. When the strange light disappeared, time began flowing normally again. Meanwhile, the black holes in the sky had all disappeared. As for Sabrid, he had lost over half his HP from the attack, retaining only around 200 million HP. Cracks had also appeared on the armor he wore, and fresh blood flowed out from all over his body. However, before Sabrid could react, the slightly pale Xueqi had already arrived before the NPC. Not giving Sabrid any time to catch his breath, Xueqi brandished the light of two worlds once more. Spatial slash. Swords transmigration. Although the fusion of skill and combat technique wasn't comparable to the fusion of skill and skill, the combination still increased the effectiveness of his skill significantly. The next moment, 6 sword lights tore through space and approached Sabrid. Reacting quickly, Sabrid held his great sword horizontally before him and activated the Tier 4 defensive skill, Steel Fortress. The skill created a defensive barrier in front of him and increased his defense by 500% temporarily. 1 slash. 2 slashes. 3 slashes. Every one of Xueqi's attacks managed to slice through Sabrid's defensive barrier without fail, but the barrier still bought Sabrid enough time to defend against the attacks with his great sword. Boom, boom, boom. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. The next moment, explosions echoed throughout Dragonheart Island one after another. Simultaneously, Sabrid's HP fell time after time. When the last sword light collided with Sabrid's great sword, the NPC got smashed into the ground at the speed of light, the impact creating a crater over a dozen meters deep. This last attack also zeroed Sabrid's HP, and the knight passed away with a reluctant look on his face. Meanwhile, Xueqi, hovering in the air, saw his experience bar filling up rapidly. In no time at all, a golden glow enveloped him as his level rose from level 140 to level 141. However, nobody paid any attention to Xueqi at this time. Instead, everyone had their heads down as they gaped at Sabrid's corpse lying in the crater. As if time had stopped moving, a deathly silence enveloped the entrance of Dragonheart City. As the adventurer team players spectating the fight from the distant port watched Xueqi collect Sabrid's loot, a sense of yearning and admiration awoke in their hearts. They also grew excited beyond words. The fact that Xueqi had managed to slay a Tier 4 NPC right in front of Dragonheart City, a large neutral city, definitely made him God's domain's strongest player. In fact, most likely, nobody would believe them even if they described this scene to others. Nonetheless, they had managed to witness this miraculous feat. How could their blood not boil in this situation? However, amid everyone's excitement, Xueqi suddenly disappeared. Before anyone realized it, Xueqi had already reappeared in front of Blood Oath, catching Blood Oath and the 3 peak experts protecting him off guard. "Commander Blood Oath, we meet again," Xueqi said with a faint smile. "I'm sure you know why I came here." Although Xueqi spoke in a calm tone and was even smiling, Blood Oath and the others paled as if they had just seen a ghost. "Black Flame. You'd best not mess around." Doing his best to calm his anxious heart, Blood Oath glared at Xueqi and added in a low tone, "This is already inside Dragonheart City. Moreover, now that you've killed Sabrid, neither Dragonheart City nor Secret Hand will spare you. If you know what's good for you, you'd best leave now. You'll be dead once the City Lord or the City Defense Legion's commander arrives." On Dragonheart Island, players would suffer entirely different penalties depending on whether they had fought inside or outside Dragonheart City. The fight with Sabrid had been outside the city. Hence, even though Xueqi had killed Sabrid, the penalty he would suffer wouldn't be particularly severe. After all, the area outside the city wasn't subject to the city's protections. Even if a fight took place right outside the city's entrance, the city's NPC soldiers would, at most, move to stop the fight. They wouldn't detain the offenders at all. This was also why Sabrid and the other NPC soldiers dared take the initiative to persecute Xueqi's group before. However, Blood Oath's current position was inside Dragonheart City. If Xueqi killed him now, the severity of his crimes would be on a whole other level. "Is that so?" Smiling, Xueqi unsheathed the abyssal blade and brandished it. 3 sword lights shot out from his weapon and instantly plundered the lives of the 3 peak experts standing around Blood Oath. Even when their bodies hit the ground, none of the 3 had realized what had happened. Xueqi then turned to Blood Oath and asked, "What about now? You? How dare you?" Blood Oath was thunderstruck when he saw his 3 subordinates killed. Everyone else in the vicinity also saw this scene without missing a detail. Crap. Awesome. This is awesome. Black Flame. He must be Black Flame, right? He actually killed 3 of Warblood's peak experts right in front of Blood Oath, and Blood Oath doesn't even dare make any strange moves. Am I dreaming? Everyone felt their blood boil with excitement when they looked at Blood Oath, who dared not move a muscle in front of Xueqi. Their worship of Xueqi rose to a whole new level. Blood Oath was known throughout God's domain. After all, he was a big shot that even the superpowers had to submit to on Dragonheart Island, an existence standing at the peak of Dragonheart Island. Nonetheless, Blood Oath looked no different from an ant in front of Xueqi. This situation was simply crazy. It was so crazy that they couldn't even react to it. However, shortly after the crowd began bubbling with excitement, 3 figures suddenly descended from the sky and landed at the entrance. Every one of these figures exuded an aura much stronger than that of Sabrid. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Upon seeing these figures, Blood Oath reacted as if he had seen his savior. He looked at Xueqi and laughed. Black Flame, you are finished. Now that the Vice City Lord and 2 Knight Commanders have arrived, you shouldn't even think of leaving this place alive. One of the 3 new arrivals was none other than Xueqi, Dragonheart City's Vice City Lord. He was a level 180, Tier 4 Great Wizard, a big shot standing at the top of God's domain. According to rumors, he was only half a step away from Tier 5 and could even contend against demon princes of the same level. As for the 2 other figures, one of them was Xueqi, the commander of the Holy Star Knight Legion and one of the World Tower's protectors. She was a bona fide level 200, Tier 5 Great Holy Knight. The last person was Landrek, the commander of the City Defense Knight Legion. He was a level 180, Tier 4 Sword Emperor. Although he was the weakest among the group of 3, he was still significantly stronger than Sabrid. This was because Landrek owned Earth and Glory, a genuine legendary spear. With this weapon, he was fully capable of contending with Tier 5 existences of the same level. With these 3 NPCs around, even a Tier 5 player wouldn't be able to escape. Chapter 2804. Difference in status. Why did all these big shots show up? The players present gasped when they saw Xueqi, Xueqi, and Landrek at the entrance. They never thought that Xueqi's fight would attract so many NPC powerhouses. After all, players normally couldn't meet even one of these big shots. Nevertheless, 3 of them now appeared. Protector Xueqi, in particular, was one of the apex powerhouses of God's domain. In the absence of Tier 6 gods, she would be part of the strongest group of existences. This was because not only was Xueqi a Tier 5 NPC, but she even owned 2 legendary items, the Galaxy Sword and Bulwark of Light. She had slain dozens of demon kings, elven royalty, and void demons before. Even if a Tier 5 player existed now, they would simply be seeking death if they tried challenging her. The next moment, Blood Oath walked up to Vice City Lord Xueqi's side quickly, then pointed at Xueqi and said respectfully, Lord Vice City Lord, not only did this ruffian kill Vice Commander Sabrid, but he even killed my companions inside the city. You must punish this ruffian and protect Dragonheart City's order. Blood Oath spoke in a sonorous and powerful voice, his words echoing throughout the entrance. It sounded as if he was pronouncing the death sentence on Xueqi. Upon seeing the arrival of the 3 NPCs, Inkfeather breathed out a deep sigh of relief. When she looked at Xueqi again, a hint of glee appeared in her eyes. Let's see how you get out of this situation. When the other players present saw this scene, they couldn't help shaking their heads dejectedly. With 3 of Dragonheart City's NPC powerhouses here, it was most likely impossible for Xueqi to escape with his life. Just when everyone thought another battle would break out, Xueqi, the white-bearded old man standing beside Blood Oath, spoke up. A dragon slayer. I never thought I would get to see one in my lifetime, and such a young one at that, Xueqi said, a faint smile appearing on his face. It seems times are changing. The Vice City Lord's words rendered everyone present stunned and confused. What dragon slayer? Blood Oath was similarly stunned by Xueqi's words. He couldn't figure out what the Vice City Lord was getting at. Instead of punishing Xueqi as soon as possible, the NPC brought up the topic of Dragon Slayer out of nowhere. Just what was this NPC trying to do? You overpraise me, Lord Vice City Lord. Turning to look at Cruz, Xuefeng said, "My friends and I just got lucky to slay a dragon that had yet to enter adulthood." No. A dragon is a dragon. Your accomplishment of slaying a Tier 4 infant dragon while being at Tier 4 yourself is something even Lady Shara never achieved, Cruz countered, shaking his head. If not for you, Lady Shara wouldn't have left the World Tower to come here in person. Cruz's words left Blood Oath dumbfounded. You can head to the World Tower to collect your honorary badge afterward. As soon as Shara finished speaking, she vanished from everyone's sight. Blood Oath was dumbfounded by this situation. He never thought that Shara had come here just to meet Xuefeng. Moreover, she hadn't even mentioned a single word about Sabrid, as if Sabrid was merely an insignificant insect. Before Blood Oath could snap out of his daze, Vice City Lord Cruz walked up to Xuefeng. "Congratulations, young dragon slayer," Cruz said happily. "It has been 50 years since Lady Shara last conferred the Holy Star Legion's honorary knight position to anyone. Even Commander Landrek is still challenging for that position." Upon seeing Cruz speaking with Xuefeng so amicably, the surrounding players felt their worldviews fragmenting. They simply couldn't figure out what exactly Xuefeng had done to garner the appreciation of these NPC powerhouses, so much so that they even ignored the killing of Sabrid, the City Defense Legion's vice commander. The next moment, just as Blood Oath was about to say something, Xuefeng cut him off, saying, "Lord Cruz, when my companions and I were trying to enter the city before, this person here accused me of being suspicious and instigated Vice Commander Sabrid to provoke my group. May I know if it is possible to imprison him as punishment?" "Black Flame. You're slandering me." Blood Oath panicked at Xuefeng's words. Hurriedly he explained, "I have done no such thing. It was Lord Sabrid himself who decided to do so. The people around us can testify for me." At this time, Blood Oath already understood that Vice City Lord Cruz had no intention whatsoever of pursuing Xuefeng for Sabrid's murder. Moreover, now that Xuefeng had gained a very high position in Dragonheart City, if Blood Oath did not withdraw from this place immediately, he would definitely suffer. "Do you mean that I, an honorary knight of the Holy Star Legion, am lying?" Xuefeng asked, smiling as he looked at Blood Oath. As soon as Xuefeng finished speaking, Cruz nodded and looked at Blood Oath. He then said sternly, "Regardless of whether your words are true or false, you have slandered one of the Holy Star Legion's honorary knights. For this offense, you will be imprisoned for 15 days as punishment." "No. This is unfair." He clearly attacked first. Blood Oath was startled by this turn of events. He never thought that Xuefeng would play such a hand. However, it was useless to resist. Glaring at Xuefeng, he bellowed, "Black Flame, I'll make you pay for this. The Secret Hand Association won't let you off, either. Get out of prison first, then talk." Smiling nonchalantly, Xuefeng said, "Rest assured, once you get out, everything outside would have already ended." The Secret Hand Association indeed possessed a lot of Tier 4 NPCs. On the other hand, he was no pushover, either. This was especially true now that he was an honorary knight of the Holy Star Knight Legion. The association would have to think twice before they tried anything against him. The Holy Star Knight Legion was both the manager and protector of the World Tower. The Secret Hand Association would be suicidal to attack him inside the World Tower. As for Dragonheart Island's surrounding sea zones, he rarely visited these areas normally. At most, he would be sailing by. Moreover, once the seal on Dragonheart Island was lifted, he could outright teleport to and from the island. Before Blood Oath could say anything more, a squad of level 160 soldiers came and escorted him away. How ruthless! Is this the status and influence Tier 4 powerhouses possess? Tier 4. I must get promoted to Tier 4. So, this is Zero Wing's Black Flame? He's even more amazing than the rumors. I wonder if Zero Wing is recruiting Tier 2 players? If I can join such a guild, I won't have to worry about anything in Dragonheart City. When the surrounding players saw NPC soldiers bundling off Dragonheart Island's most feared man, they were taken aback by Xuefeng's capabilities. They also understood why Xuefeng had not killed Blood Oath outright. Compared to the penalty of dying once, the consequences of getting imprisoned for 15 days were much more severe. This was especially true now that Xuefeng had gained such a high status in Dragonheart City. For him, 15 days was more than enough to bring down the Warblood adventurer team. Meanwhile, all Blood Oath could do was watch as all of this happened. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. At this time, everyone present could already foresee Zero Wing standing at the peak of Dragonheart Island. Our problem has been resolved. After watching Blood Oath getting taken away, Xueqi returned to Divine Shadow and the others. Smiling, he said, "We can enter Dragonheart City now." In response, Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame nodded their heads stiffly. Even now, they still found it difficult to believe what had happened. Just a moment ago, War Blood had been at the apex of its power. Yet, with only a few words from Xueqi, it now faced the threat of dissolution. Meanwhile, news of this situation spread like wildfire. In only a matter of minutes, it entered the ears of everyone in Dragonheart City. The news caused an especially large commotion among the city's various guilds and adventurer teams. Chapter 2805. Fame shakes Dragonheart City. What did you say? Black Flame killed a Tier 4 NPC and even got Blood Oath imprisoned for 15 days? When the various guilds and adventurer teams operating in Dragonheart City heard of Xueqi's miraculous feat, they were thunderstruck. They repeatedly pressed the reporting personnel for confirmation regarding the validity of this information. As if having expected such a reaction, the reporting personnel promptly sent a battle video of Xueqi killing Sabre to their respective superiors, as well as videos of Xueqi killing 3 of Warblood's peak experts right in front of Blood Oath and of NPC soldiers dragging Blood Oath off to prison. Dragonheart City, Bloodstone Bar. A group of level 123+, Tier 3 experts had gathered in this bar. Of the group, even the weakest person was at the Refinement Realm standard. There were also more than a dozen peak experts and 4 apex experts. Meanwhile, seated at the head of this group was none other than Elder Wu, one of 13 Thrones' founders. Are you sure this information is correct? Elder Wu couldn't help feeling skeptical as he read the report from a woman shrouded in a layer of black mist. This was because 1,000 Lives' report was simply too astonishing. After all, the reason their group was currently operating so secretively was War Blood. Nevertheless, Elder Wu was being told that War Blood was finished. Moreover, its destruction was due entirely to Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame. How could he possibly believe this? It is 100% true. Many powers already have designs on War Blood's territory. If not for War Blood still retaining some contact with Secret Hand, they would have most likely taken action already, 1,000 Lives insisted in a determined tone. Moreover, according to the information I collected, Heaven's Blade appears to have formed a close relationship with Black Flame. If Zero Wing has Heaven's Blade's full support, I'm afraid it won't be long before Zero Wing occupies a significant portion of Dragonheart City's various resources. What is Black Flame thinking? He actually has the leisure to come to Dragonheart City? Is he not worried about the deteriorating situation over at the Twin Towers Kingdom? Elder Wu, who wore a somewhat haggard expression, was surprised by 1,000 Lives' words. Simultaneously, he was confused as to how Xueqi had grown so terrifying this rapidly. The fact that Xueqi had killed a Tier 4 NPC without any repercussions and imprisoned Blood Oath with just a few words proved that he already stood at the top of Dragonheart City in terms of status. He was now an existence that Dragonheart City's various powers had to look up to. Yet, according to Elder Wu's information, Zero Wing's operations over at the Twin Towers Kingdom were in dire straits. At this stage of the game, complete Tier 3 legacies were of utmost importance to the various superpowers. These legacies would allow them to go up against the NPC forces. Hence, over 20 superpowers were currently harassing Zero Wing's operations in the Twin Towers Kingdom with peak experts every day. While these superpowers were going up against the alliance of Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor at Sky Spring City, they had also dispatched many members to head to the Secret Covenant Tower from the neighboring NPC cities. To prevent these players from flooding into the Secret Covenant Tower, Zero Wing's alliance had stationed a large number of personnel on the routes to the tower. Thus far, battles between both sides involving over 100,000 players had already occurred 5 times, while battles involving several tens of thousands of players had occurred more than 20 times. In the most recent battle, Starlink and Miracle had even joined in the fray and dispatched a total of 4 Tier 4 experts. Fortunately, Zero Wing's side had dispatched 3 Tier 4 experts to counter. One of them was the commander of Zero Wing's main force, Fire Dance. One was Unyielding Soul's Vice Guild leader Unyielding Heart, and one was Crimson Emperor's Vice Guild leader Illusory Words. As for Black Flame, He was nowhere to be seen. In regard to this situation, everyone was confused as to why Black Flame sat out this battle. This battle had thoroughly shaken the entire God's Domain. It was the first one involving multiple Tier 4 experts since God's Domain's launch. By the end of this battle, a large portion of the glacial lake plain, where the conflict took place, had been reduced to a barren wasteland. Although the fight had ended in Zero Wing's victory, if not for Zero Wing's powerful war weapons, such as the Crimson Dragon flying ships, combat puppets, and advanced barriers, the outcome would have been different. Moreover, the increasing rampancy of NPC forces had forced the various superpowers to conserve a significant portion of their forces. However, Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor were no longer in a good state. The three guilds had suffered tremendous losses due to the protracted war. This was especially true for Zero Wing. After all, unlike Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperor, Zero Wing had no background to rely on whatsoever. Knowing this, the various superpowers had also put in a lot of effort to whittle Zero Wing to death as quickly as possible. The actions the various superpowers took included poaching Zero Wing's experts and cutting off Zero Wing's income sources. Zero Wing's loss of income sources in the real world had put the guild in an especially difficult position. Most importantly, the various superpowers had also blocked Zero Wing's equipment and material sources. Although it wasn't a complete embargo, the various superpowers had jacked up the prices of equipment and materials to absurd levels. Little Missy, may I know if you are the one running this wanderer's shop? Elder Wu couldn't help asking the question on his mind. No, this shop is run by guild leader Black Flame. I am only managing this place on his behalf, Yuluo said, shaking her head. Black Flame runs this place? Elder Wu was stunned. In its current magnificent state, the wanderer's shop was most likely worth 1,000,000 ancient gold or more. Elder Wu might have believed it if Heaven's Blade owned this place. After all, Heaven's Blade had been operating on Dragonheart Island for a long time now. However, he was told that Shifeng actually owned this shop. How could he swallow such a tale? While Elder Wu was stunned, Thousand Lives quickly reacted, asking, "We are from 13 Thrones. We are acquainted with guild leader Black Flame, and we currently have business to discuss with him. Can we meet him now?" "I'm afraid you will have to wait a while," Yuluo said, shaking her head. Over a dozen of Dragonheart Island's powers are currently discussing business with guild leader Black Flame, so it isn't appropriate for you to enter now. However, you won't have to wait too long, either. I believe they will be done in another dozen minutes or so. Over a dozen powers? Elder Wu was slightly surprised. He never thought that so many of Dragonheart Island's powers had already made a move. All right. We'll wait. Elder Wu had expected that some of Dragonheart Island's powers would try to meet with Shifeng since Shifeng was basically the overlord of Dragonheart Island now. It was only natural for guilds and adventurer teams to try to partner with Zero Wing. However, Elder Wu wasn't too worried about these other guilds and adventurer teams. After all, unlike them, 13 Thrones had the city building order, something Zero Wing urgently needed, as a bargaining chip. After waiting for around a dozen minutes, Elder Wu's group saw more of Dragonheart Island's local powers arrive and join them waiting on the second floor. Among these powers was the Four Saint Society, a super guild that was equal in strength to 13 Thrones, represented by its first vice guild leader, Intoxicated Drunkard. He was a monster with the title of Strongest Shield of the Sea. Unlike other superpowers though, the Four Saint Society had focused its development entirely on the sea. Its naval strength now rivaled that of the 5 great super guilds. Intoxicated Drunkard's arrival surprised even Elder Wu. However, as the various powers observed each other, Yu Luo, who had been quietly standing guard by the staircase, suddenly said, "Guild leader Black Flame just finished his discussions with the first batch of powers. You may now go upstairs." "Will everyone be going together?" Thousand Lives asked. They wanted to negotiate with Shifeng in private. A group negotiation was out of the question. That's right. There are too many powers seeking to meet with guild leader Black Flame. Holding private discussions would take too long. Yu Luo nodded. If you wish to meet with guild leader Black Flame privately, you can return a few days later. You people. Thousand Lives grew a little angry at Yu Luo's words. They were representatives of 13 Thrones, a super guild. They had already shown plenty of respect by waiting here for over a dozen minutes. Yet, their treatment was no different from what the other powers here received. Thousand. It doesn't matter. We'll enter together if we have to, Elder Wu said, chuckling. He then continued in a whisper. Black Flame really knows how to play his cards. He knows the various powers are bringing various partnership offers and business deals to him. So he's basically having everyone compete with each other. At the same time, he gets to choose the best deal. Unfortunately, our proposal is something Black Flame will not be able to refuse. After giving the matter some thought, Thousand Lives nodded in agreement. In any case, Xueqi would still have to beg them for help. It wouldn't matter whether they negotiated privately or in a group. In this situation, the Four Saint Society's group remained silent. It was evident that they were also confident in their proposal. Meanwhile, upon seeing this situation, Yu Luo smiled and said, "Please enter." After Yu Luo finished speaking, the representatives of the dozen or so powers present made their way up to the Wanderer's shop's 3rd floor. However, upon arriving on the 3rd floor and seeing the items displayed here, everyone nearly had their eyes fall out of their sockets. Level 120 to Level 130 Dark Gold Set Equipment Designs. Level 100 Plus Epic Equipment Designs. Advanced Magic Array Designs. Advanced Shop Construction Design. Advanced Hotel Construction Design. Master Ice Fire Bomb Design. Each and every item displayed here was something that couldn't be found easily in the outside world. However, the items were also astonishingly expensive. Even the cheapest cost 6,000 ancient gold, enough money to purchase a relatively good plot of land in Dragonheart City. However, while the gathered group was agog over the items available on the 3rd floor, a sense of oppression suddenly enveloped everyone, making them feel incredibly uncomfortable. This sense of oppression originated from the 2 cloaked men standing beside Xueqi. Tier 48? Why are there even more Tier 4s? Both Elder Wu's group and Intoxicated Drunkard's group were shocked by this situation. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU first, it was Heaven's Blade's Yu Luo. Now, 2 more Tier 4 players actually appeared behind Xueqi. Moreover, the 2 men's auras were much stronger than that of any of the Tier 4 players they had come across before. Tier 4 players currently stood at the very top of God's Domain's player hierarchy. Having one Tier 4 player would already allow a player force to gain a stable foothold in the game's currently chaotic state and become an object of fear for the various superpowers. Xueqi currently had 3 Tier 4 players on his side. Including Xueqi and Fire Dance, this meant Zero Wing had a total of 5 Tier 4 players under its command. This caliber of strength was simply maddening. Even the 5 great super guilds were unlikely to have as many Tier 4 players as Zero Wing did. Meanwhile, after scanning the crowd before him, Xueqi said calmly, "Everyone, if you have something to say, please say it directly. I still have many matters to attend to, so I truly do not have time for beating around the bush." Chapter 2807. 3-Star Wanderer's Shop. Xueqi's statement was like a hammer that struck everyone's mind. For a time, those intent on negotiating with Xueqi to maximize their own profits were nonplussed. Even Elder Wu, who had come here brimming with confidence, was momentarily at a loss for words. Xueqi's display of power was simply too astonishing. Zero Wing's strength had severely exceeded Elder Wu's expectations. The 4 Tier 4 players here in this Wanderer's Shop plus the 3 Tier 4 experts over at the Twin Towers Kingdom meant Zero Wing had a total of 7 Tier 4 players on its side. With such strength, even NPC forces would find dealing with Zero Wing tough. While the gathered crowd suspected that Xueqi was trying to instill fear into them by showing off his power, Xueqi himself didn't think he was doing such a thing at all. This was because he was truly busy. Initially, Xueqi planned to contact Heaven's Blade's commander after entering Dragonheart City. However, for some reason, Divine Edge and the others couldn't contact Xueqi, not even through offline means. This situation temporarily prevented Zero Wing and Heaven's Blade from furthering their partnership, and it severely affected Xueqi's plans. Fortunately, Divine Shadow had agreed to gather up the remaining Heaven's Blade members and put Heaven's Blade under Zero Wing's banner in the meantime. Now, Heaven's Blade was barely considered an adventurer team subordinated to Zero Wing and had to obey Xueqi's arrangements. Dragonheart Island's various powers had long since split Heaven's Blade's territories inside the World Tower among themselves after the adventurer team disbanded. However, Warblood's fall granted Dragonheart Island's various powers a new opportunity to gain more territory. Hence, Xueqi had tasked Divine Shadow with snatching Warblood's territory first. After all, these territories were important sources of ancient coins. He couldn't keep Heaven's Blade's members fed for free. Aside from territories inside the World Tower, Heaven's Blade also had over a dozen shops in key locations inside Dragonheart City. Xueqi planned on bringing some of Candlelight's products to sell in these shops. As for the land surrounding the World Tower, due to Xueqi's absence, Divine Shadow could only delegate one medium-sized land to Zero Wing with his authority. What this land would be used for was entirely up to Xueqi. However, half of the profits the land generated would have to be split with Heaven's Blade. After all, there were still plenty of people in the adventurer team that needed nurturing. Xueqi had no opinion in regard to this situation. On the contrary, he was very happy to secure the management rights of a medium-sized land. After all, Zero Wing's members also had to explore the World Tower. The hotel built on a small-sized land was hardly enough for Zero Wing's purposes. A medium-sized hotel would alleviate the guild's pressure. Hence, Xueqi needed to arrange what kind of hotel to construct. Aside from this, Xueqi also received another piece of good news when he entered Dragonheart City. The Wanderer's shop was eligible for promotion to 3-star status. Originally, he had only planned to have the Wanderer's shop purchase some epic materials and the precious materials necessary to construct the small mobile fortress. He never thought that in the time he was away, the Wanderer's shop would actually meet the conditions for promotion to 3-star status. So long as a Wanderer's shop reached 3-star status, it would undergo a qualitative transformation. Hence, Xueqi had decisively spent 30,000 of the ancient gold the Wanderer's shop had earned during his absence, and upgraded the shop to 3-star status. However, before he could even check out the 3-star Wanderer's shop specifics, Dragonheart City's various powers had come looking for him already. This forced him to push back his schedule and negotiate with these profit-hungry powers seeking a share of Warblood's corpse. Meanwhile, after silence enveloped the room for a short moment, Intoxicated Drunkard, the Four Saint Society's vice-guild leader, stepped forward. Guild leader Black Flame, I understand that Zero Wing is planning to partner with Heaven's Blade to annex all of Warblood's resource spots. However, although Blood Oath is currently imprisoned and Warblood is in chaos, Warblood's backer, the Secret Hand Association, is not to be trifled with. With Secret Hand's presence, annexing the 17 resource spots Warblood holds on the 4th underground floor will be difficult. Of course, I believe that with your strength, annexing those resource spots shouldn't be a problem. However, maintaining them will be. Such a task will require a large number of experts. It can't be done with just a few Tier 4 experts. Hence, the Four Saint Society wishes to partner with Zero Wing to go against Warblood and Secret Hand. Intoxicated Drunkard said confidently. Once we annex all of Warblood's resource spots on the 4th floor, each of our sides will take half. Of course, we won't let Zero Wing give up these resource spots for nothing. After saying so, Intoxicated Drunkard took out a city-building order from his bag. The Four Saints Society understands that Zero Wing is currently having difficulty defending the Secret Covenant Tower. However, with this city-building order, Zero Wing can instantly construct a guild city beside the tower. With this guild city to fall back on, Zero Wing should have a much easier time repelling the various superpowers. In addition, the Four Saints Society will also trade various rare materials and level 110+ secret silver weapons and equipment with Zero Wing. We will sell these items to Zero Wing at market value. May I know what you think of this, Guild Leader Black Flame? When Intoxicated Drunkard took out the city-building order, the other powers' representatives were dumbfounded. This situation also made many of the powers seeking to partner with Zero Wing despair. The Four Saint Society was a super guild. Only a few powers operating on Dragonheart Island could match its resources, manpower, and background. Even setting aside the fact that the Four Saint Society was a super guild, just the city-building order alone made it impossible for the various powers present to compete with the Four Saint Society. This was because the city-building order was what Zero Wing currently needed the most. At this time, a gloomy expression appeared on Elder Wu's face. He never thought that the Four Saint Society would have a city-building order too. This would undoubtedly increase the competition. After the silence in the room had stretched for some time, Feng swept a glance at the various powers representatives. May I know if anyone else has something to say? If not, I will have to ask you to leave. I still have to continue detailed discussions with Vice Guild Leader Drunkard, Feng said in a calm tone. However, his interest in the city building order was obvious to everyone present. Upon seeing this situation, Intoxicated Drunkard smiled in satisfaction. He was very confident in the success of the partnership this time, as he was certain Zero Wing wouldn't be able to resist the city building order's temptation. Hence, he had paid no heed to having to attend negotiations together with the other powers. What should we do now, Elder Wu? Thousand Lives asked anxiously. The World Tower's fourth underground floor was crucial for them to search for Tier 4 legacy lands. The influence of a Tier 4 player was not something Tier 3 players could hope to match. Every addition of a Tier 4 player could increase a guild's overall strength by a large margin. Simultaneously, Tier 4 players were crucial in resisting the invasion of NPC forces. For the current super guilds, Tier 3 players were no longer the thing they lacked the most. After all, they had the required foundation and resources to nurture a large number of high-caliber experts. Even without complete Tier 3 legacies, it was only a matter of time before these experts reached Tier 3. As proof of this point, not one of the superpowers attempting to wrestle control over the Secret Covenant Tower was a super guild. Only super first-rate guilds, which were lacking in foundation and resources, were contending for the tower. However, the World Tower's fourth underground floor, which could reliably generate Tier 4 legacy lands, was a different story. Moreover, the World Tower still had the fifth underground floor and beyond. The chances of Tier 4 legacy lands appearing in these locations were most likely even higher. However, if a power did not possess a base of operations on the fourth underground floor, exploring the even more dangerous fifth underground floor would be utterly impossible for this power. Just as the various powers' representatives were about to turn around and leave, a deep voice resounded in the room. Wait a minute. Guild leader Black Flame. Suddenly, Elder Wu said, 13 Thrones plans on partnering with Zero Wing as well. Moreover, the conditions we offer will not be any inferior to the Four Saints societies. After saying so, Elder Wu also brought out a city-building order. Crap! Another city-building order. The representatives of the various powers present gasped at this situation. The city-building order was an incomparably rare item, no less rare than fragmented legendary items. Meanwhile, it was many times more valuable than fragmented legendary items. After all, there was no way a fragmented legendary item could compare with an entire guild city. When Elder Wu took out a city-building order, Intoxicated Drunkard's complexion darkened slightly. This is interesting. What should have originally been a monopoly has now become a two-sided competition. I wonder how Black Flame will decide? Both parties are super guilds, and neither is weaker than the other. Moreover, both have their own advantages as well. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The various powers representatives couldn't help their curiosity as they looked at Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard. They wondered how Feng would proceed in this situation. By stating that 13 Thrones would match the Four Saint Society's offer, Elder Wu was basically hinting to Intoxicated Drunkard for their two guilds to avoid competing with each other. That way, they could maximize the profits from Zero Wing. Simultaneously, his words also compelled Feng to make a decision. Feng should choose to partner with either 13 Thrones or the Four Saints Society. If Feng refused to choose one, then negotiations would not proceed. Naturally, Intoxicated Drunkard quickly picked up on Elder Wu's intentions. Hence, he remained silent and simply looked at Feng. Evidently, he planned on taking the same stance as Elder Wu. It seems both of you came with sincerity for cooperation. Feng smiled as he looked at the two city-building orders before him. Unfortunately, I cannot agree to any of your condition. However, with NPC forces currently running rampant, having one additional stronghold meant that a guild would have to spread its forces even thinner, which was indeed an incredibly troublesome matter. In the case of Zero Wing though, these words were blatant nonsense. However, Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard knew that it wouldn't be appropriate for them to call Feng out on his lie, so they decided to play along with him. Manpower. Ignoring the act the two people before him were putting on, Feng laughed and said, "You two might not believe me, but what Zero Wing lacks now is only manpower. We do not lack anything else. If your two guilds really wish to partner with Zero Wing and acquire World Tower's 4th underground floor's resource spots, take out some real sincerity. Truth be told, the city-building order was something Xueqi could do without. A small mobile fortress was basically half a city. Not to mention, an ordinary guild city wouldn't suffice to let Zero Wing exert complete control over the secret Covenant Tower. Only a fortress could do that. This was because a guild city was more focused on defense than offense. A guild city mainly served as a place for players to rest and trade. At best, it could provide some benefits to the players heading into the secret Covenant Tower. It couldn't actually prevent other powers from forcing their way into the tower. In the end, Zero Wing would still have to rely on its own strength to accomplish this feat. This just so happened to be something beyond Zero Wing right now. However, it was a different story for a small mobile fortress. Mobile fortresses possessed great defensive capabilities and were top-tier war weapons. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to become the overlords of the sky. Manpower. Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard nodded slightly at the same time. Although they found Xueqi's words more agreeable now, they still felt he was putting on an act. The two of them then exchanged looks and came to a tacit understanding. Since Xueqi insisted on acting, they would play along and see how long Xueqi could keep doing so. Smiling, Intoxicated Drunkard asked, "May I know how you plan on having our two guilds cooperate with you, Guild Leader Black Flame?" "Simple. I just need your two guilds to supply me with 300 advanced forgers, 200 advanced alchemists, 500 advanced architects, 100 advanced magicians, and 2 master magicians. I'll also need 10,000 Tier 3 players. Lend these people to me for half a month," Xueqi said, chuckling. "If you can agree to that, I will give you 2 of Warblood's small fortresses." When Xueqi finished speaking, Elder Wu and Intoxicated Drunkard were stunned. They couldn't understand Xueqi's purpose. Not only did he not want their city-building orders, but he was even asking for a large number of lifestyle players. Although Xueqi had also asked for 10,000 Tier 3 experts, the various superpowers already had around 50,000 Tier 3 expert players on average at this stage of the game. Lending 10,000 Tier 3 experts wouldn't be a problem for their 2 super guilds. On the contrary, the conditions Xueqi offered were incredibly advantageous to their 2 guilds. With a small fortress on the World Tower's 4th underground floor, their 2 guilds could reside on the 4th floor in the future. Simultaneously, they would have the necessary foundation to explore the 5th underground floor. "May I know your thoughts on this?" Xueqi asked, smiling. "City building order? The 4th underground floor's small fortresses? Tier 4 legacy lands?" These things were inconsequential to his present self. So long as he had the small mobile fortress, nobody in God's domain would be able to threaten Zero Wing. Not even Tier 4 players. The only problem was the massive scale of the small mobile fortress's construction, which required a considerable amount of manpower. It wasn't something he could accomplish easily by himself. Initially, he had been considering having all of Candlelight's lifestyle players halt their work and focus on constructing the small mobile fortress. He never imagined that 2 super guilds would send themselves to his doorsteps. "Is what you say true, Guild Leader Black Flame?" Intoxicated Drunkard asked skeptically. "You can rest assured on this point. We can sign a contract for this. Your 2 guilds will be free to capture the 2 promised fortresses, and Zero Wing will not lay a finger on them. I can even stop Secret Hand's NPCs from interfering with your 2 guilds," Xueqi said with a sincere smile on his face. Upon hearing Xueqi's words of assurance, Elder Wu said without hesitation, "In that case, I agree to your offer on behalf of 13 Thrones, Guild Leader Black Flame." What super guilds lacked the least was manpower. Even though Xueqi was asking for quite a lot of manpower, it was well within their tolerance. The Four Saints Society has no problem with this arrangement, either. Intoxicated Drunkard said, an indescribably happy smile appearing on his face. For the Four Saints Society, being able to gain one of Warblood's small fortresses just by loaning some manpower was an incredibly profitable trade. It was much better than surrendering a precious city-building order. As for the threat of the Secret Hand Association, just one word from Xueqi would most likely prevent any of the association's Tier 4 NPCs from setting foot in the World Tower. After all, the Holy Star Knight Legion was both the protector and manager of the World Tower. Prohibiting NPCs that attacked players from entering the World Tower would be an easy task for the Knight Legion. Without the Secret Hand Association, The only Tier 4 combatant Warblood would have on its side would be Autumn Plant. Chapter 2809. Half a step away, Sabred had dropped a total of 6 items. Aside from the fragmented legendary greatsword Demonic Shadow, the 5 remaining items looked very ordinary. In fact, they looked so normal that Xueqi was confused when he first stored them in his bag. This was because the 5 items appeared to be a set. Of the 5 items, 4 were mirrors made entirely of crystal. However, unlike the fragmented legendary greatsword, these 4 mirrors did not radiate a frightening aura. More precisely, they did not even have a hint of aura. They looked ordinary beyond ordinary. As for the 5th item, it was an ink-black crystal the size of a basketball. Like the 4 crystalline mirrors, this crystal ball was similarly indescribably ordinary. It did not radiate even a whiff of mana. Interesting. Realization flashed in Xueqi's eyes as he looked at the ink-black crystal ball and 4 crystalline mirrors placed before him. If I didn't take a closer look at them, I would never have thought these 5 items actually had a magic disguise. The standard of this disguise is also absurdly high. It is definitely at the half-step Grandmaster standard. In God's domain, apart from special items, players needed to use the appraisal skill on most items to inspect their information. However, there was also another type of item that was outside of this category, and that was magically disguised items. Items that had magic disguise used on them would have their information concealed. Using the appraisal skill on these items would show that they were no different from ordinary garbage. However, applying a magic disguise on an item was a complicated process, and even a master magician would need several hours just to complete a master magic disguise's magic array. Needless to say, placing a half-step Grandmaster magic disguise would be even more tedious. And worse, the disguise would disappear whenever the disguised item was used. One would have to apply a new magic disguise to disguise the item again. Thus, magically disguised items were incredibly rare in God's domain. Most players wouldn't even come across one throughout their career in God's domain. And if players did come across such an item, they would often treat it as garbage and dispose of it. However, Sabred was both the vice commander of Dragonheart City's City Defense Knight Legion and a level 160, Tier 4 NPC. In God's domain, Dragonheart City could be considered a kingdom. In terms of status, the neutral city rivaled imperial capitals. Hence, despite being only the vice commander of one of Dragonheart City's Knight Legions, Sabred's status was higher than even that of magistrates that managed the various kingdoms' main cities. In addition, Sabred was also an executive of the Secret Hand Association, the strongest NPC force on Dragonheart Island.